The interstellar classroom buzzed with low murmurs, the universal translator weaving a symphony of languages into a comprehensible hum. Each desk floated slightly above the ground, formed from shimmering nanite material that reshaped to accommodate its occupant. The students, some reptilian, others encased in exoskeletons, a few gelatinous blobs pulsating with quiet intelligence, watched with varying degrees of disinterest as their teacher glided into the room. Professor Zarkosh, a towering, multi-limbed creature with bioluminescent nodes running along his elongated skull, had been teaching for over a century. His reputation was legendary. No student had ever passed his final inquiry. It was not merely a question but a paradox, a riddle so complex that even the most brilliant minds across the galaxies had failed to answer it. Yet, here in this classroom, amongst the brightest young minds of the cosmos, sat a 15-year-old human named Ethan Carter. Scrawny, bespectacled, and perpetually lost in thought, Ethan was a late addition to the Intergalactic Academy of Higher Intelligence. He was the first human ever admitted, a token experiment by the United Galactic Federation to see if Earth's inhabitants had any intellectual value in the greater cosmic order. So far they had remained unimpressed. Professor Zarkosh turned his luminous gaze towards Ethan. The classroom fell into silence. Human, Zarkosh's deep, reverberating voice echoed through the chamber. Since your species insists on proving its worth among the intellectual elite, you will be the first to attempt the final inquiry. No human has ever faced it. None ever will again. The other students chuckled in their various tones. Ethan blinked, adjusting his glasses. He had been studying the alien sciences for months, absorbing knowledge at an alarming rate. He was no fool, he understood the challenge. But the way Zarkosh phrased it, this wasn't just a test. It was an execution. Zarkosh's limbs unfurled a glowing hologram in the center of the room, displaying a formula so intricate it made even the more advanced species shudder. The professor's bioluminescence dimmed in amusement. Solve this equation, human, and you will have answered a question that has plagued our galaxy for millennia. Ethan studied the equation. His fingers twitched. His mind raced. Then he grinned. Silence fell over the classroom. The floating hologram of the impossibly complex equation pulsed with energy, an embodiment of the intellectual challenge that had stumped the greatest minds across the galaxy. Ethan Carter pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, his heart pounding. He had spent years devouring mathematics, physics, and the bizarre theoretical models Earth's greatest minds had developed. But this equation was unlike anything he had ever seen. And yet, it felt familiar. Professor Zarkosh loomed over him, 6 glowing eyes radiating condescension. Shall we continue, human? Or will you concede defeat as expected? The other students chittered in amusement. A crystalline entity clicked its fingers against its desk, creating a sound like shattering ice. A reptilian scholar flicked its forked tongue, whispering something Ethan's translator registered as, "This should be amusing." But Ethan wasn't listening. His mind was alight. The equation was an amalgamation of multiple known galactic mathematical principles, but it had gaps, missing steps, hidden layers, obfuscations meant to disguise its true nature. He reached forward. The holographic interface shimmered at his touch. The moment his fingers made contact, his mind worked at an impossible speed. The classroom watched in stunned silence as Ethan's hands moved across the hologram with the precision of an artist. Numbers and variables shifted, replaced, rearranged. Ancient constants, once thought unsolvable, suddenly linked together in elegant harmony. Professor Zarkosh's bioluminescence flickered erratically, a sign of deep disturbance. "Impossible," he whispered, his voice a static hiss. Ethan barely registered him. He was too deep. Patterns emerged. The equation wasn't just a problem, it was a key to something ancient, something forbidden. His mind reeled. The answer wasn't just mathematical. It was functional. It described a process, a mechanism, a lost technology, a weapon. A power source? A cosmic truth? Ethan's fingers moved faster. The classroom felt heavier, as if the weight of the entire galaxy pressed upon them. The alien students, once mocking, were now silent. A few of them leaned forward, their natural arrogance dissolving into something Ethan had never seen before. Fear. The moment Ethan pressed the final input, the entire hologram froze. The nanite desks trembled. The air itself shuddered. The answer was complete. Professor Zarkosh stumbled back, his tendrils curling inward as if shielding himself from the revelation. You solved it? Ethan exhaled sharply, his mind still reeling from the cosmic insight he had just unlocked. He turned toward the professor. What did I just discover? Zarkosh didn't answer. He couldn't. Because across the galaxy, something had just awakened. The air in the classroom felt wrong. Heavy. Almost electric. Ethan's fingers trembled as he pulled away from the holographic equation, its symbols now frozen in place, glowing ominously. He could feel something vast and incomprehensible, stirring in the depths of his mind, like an ancient door creaking open. Professor Zarkosh remained motionless, his 6 bioluminescent eyes flickering erratically in patterns that Ethan's translator failed to interpret. Around the classroom, the other students, some of the most brilliant alien minds in the galaxy, sat in stunned silence. Then a soft chime. The equation, now complete, suddenly pulsed, sending out a ripple of energy that distorted the very fabric of space within the classroom. A faint hum filled the air, and for a moment Ethan swore he could hear something else. A whisper. Something old. Something not meant for mortal minds. Zarkosh jerked upright, his tendrils twisting violently. He snapped his attention to Ethan, his voice barely more than a horrified whisper. You were not supposed to do that. Ethan swallowed hard, his throat dry. What is this? The professor took a step back, his translucent skin pulsing with erratic color shifts, pure panic. That equation, Zarkosh's voice wavered. It was never meant to be solved. Ethan frowned. Then why give it as a test question? The room went deathly silent. The reptilian student who had mocked him earlier let out a low hiss. Because no one ever has. Another student, a crystalline being whose body shimmered with fractured light, whispered, it was a trap. A test of arrogance. To see if a species was reckless enough to try. Ethan's heartbeat pounded in his ears. He looked at the equation again. It no longer appeared like just numbers and symbols, it felt like a warning. A warning that he had just ignored. Suddenly the classroom's emergency sirens blared, flashing red lights bathing everything in an eerie glow. The walls vibrated as deep, guttural booms echoed through the university's halls. The ground beneath them shook. What is happening? One of the alien students shrieked. Zarkosh turned toward the trembling walls, his tendrils twitching with barely contained terror. They know, he muttered. Ethan's blood ran cold. Who knows? The professor turned back to him, and for the first time since Ethan had met the arrogant alien scholar, he saw something in his eyes he had never expected to see. Dread. The keepers of the forgotten, Zarkosh whispered. The ones who erased this knowledge from the universe. They are coming. As if on cue, a deep, resonant boom shattered the air. The entire building lurched, as if the very fabric of reality had been struck by an impossibly vast force. Ethan stumbled, barely catching himself against his desk. Outside the classroom's transparent walls, the sky above the university darkened. Not from clouds. Not from nightfall. But from ships. Massive, obsidian constructs descended from orbit, blotting out the twin suns of the galactic capital world. They moved in perfect synchronization, their angular designs devoid of any insignia, any identifying marks. They had no need for them. Because everyone in the galaxy already knew who they were. The archivists. The silent, merciless enforcers of forgotten knowledge. The beings who ensured that certain truths remained buried. And now they were here. For him. The classroom was in chaos. Students bolted toward the exits, shrieking in a dozen alien languages as the sirens wailed louder. But Ethan couldn't move. His eyes were locked on the descending ships, his mind racing. The equation. The key he had unknowingly unlocked. Had it been more than just a mathematical curiosity? Had it been hiding something? A lost technology? A weapon? Or something even worse? Zarkosh seized Ethan by the arm, his grip uncharacteristically desperate. We have to leave, he hissed. If they capture you, they will erase you from existence itself. Ethan snapped out of his trance. His breath was ragged, his pulse a drumbeat in his ears. Where can we run? He asked. They just blockaded the entire planet. Zarkosh hesitated. Then his eyes flickered with something strange. Something like reluctant respect. There is a way, he admitted. But you may not like it. A sudden explosion rocked the building and the walls tore apart. The archivists had arrived. The walls disintegrated. Not shattered. Not exploded. Disintegrated. The material that had once formed the classroom simply unraveled into nothing, swept away like dust caught in an invisible current. Where solid structures had once stood, there was now a yawning void, an absence of reality itself. Ethan felt something deep in his gut twist. A primal, instinctual warning that told him whatever was outside that opening was not meant to be seen by living eyes. And then they stepped through. The archivists. They did not walk. They did not hover. They simply were shifting seamlessly from the nothingness beyond into the ruined remains of the classroom. Humanoid in form but utterly featureless, their bodies were obsidian constructs, matte black, yet rippling with strange distortions as though light itself rebelled against touching them. No eyes. No mouths. No sign of life at all. But Ethan could feel them watching him. Their presence was oppressive, their silence deafening. Zarkosh gripped Ethan's arm tighter. Do not speak. Do not move. Do not even think about resisting, the professor rasped. His bioluminescent skin was dimming, an instinctive reaction to sheer terror. The lead archivist, if such a concept even applied to them, tilted its head slightly, and suddenly Ethan's mind exploded with voices. Not sound. Not words. Just concepts, forced into his consciousness, bypassing language entirely. You have solved what should never have been solved. Ethan gasped, clutching his temples as his brain burned with incomprehensible meaning. Images flickered through his mind, fragments of a history that had been buried for eons. A war. A war so vast, so cataclysmic, that it had rewritten the very structure of the cosmos itself. A weapon, the weapon, capable of unraveling existence. The equation he had solved was no simple test. It was the last key to something that was never meant to be found. And now, they had come to ensure it remained buried. Forever. Another surge of unbearable pressure crushed against Ethan's mind. His knees buckled, his vision dimming at the edges. He felt like a mere insect, standing in the presence of beings who had long since transcended the need for form. Then, something snapped inside him. A memory. The test question. It had been designed to be unsolvable. But Ethan had solved it. Not through luck. Not through some cosmic accident. Because he was human. Because humans had always defied expectations. Because humans never stopped questioning. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stand, even as his mind screamed in protest. And then, he did the one thing no living being had ever done before in the presence of an archivist. He asked a question. Why? Ethan rasped, barely able to force the word through his lips. Why erase it? Why bury it? Why do you fear it? The archivist froze. The entire room, no, the entire planet, seemed to hold its breath. For the first time the archivist hesitated. And Ethan knew. The equation wasn't dangerous because of what it did. It was dangerous because of what it revealed. Knowledge. True knowledge. The kind that unshackled civilizations. The kind that made them unstoppable. The archivists weren't protectors of the universe. They were jailers. And Ethan had just found the key to the prison. He took a slow, deliberate step forward. You can erase equations. You can wipe memories. But you can't stop us from asking questions. His voice grew stronger. You can't stop us from learning. For the first time the archivists moved. Not with aggression. Not with force. But with fear. They stepped back. One by one the featureless entities retreated, their forms shimmering like glitches in reality itself. And then with a final, silent ripple. They were gone. Ethan collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. Zarkosh stared at him, his tendrils limp, his bioluminescence flickering in stunned disbelief. You, the professor whispered. You just made them leave. Ethan looked up, breathing heavily. No, he shook his head. They left because they know what's coming next. Zarkosh blinked. And what is that? Ethan gave a weary, knowing smile. More questions. The end. Like what you just read. Don't forget to subscribe to the Void Narratives for more mind-blowing sci-fi stories. Rocket Fire.